to people who are in academia for two reasons. Number one, I have come from the academic life straight to journalism. In fact, I've never been in journalistic official academia in a way. I graduated from the Department of Philosophy and then International Politics. And it was in South Africa when I was leading a think tank, actually in 1996, that I was called upon to work as a journalist for Al Jazeera that was just about to started by the end of 1996. And now, after I left Al Jazeera, I have come back to the world of, I would say, research, studies, politics, international politics, and so on. So I made the migration from academic life to journalism, and now I'm making it back to political life in a way. So I feel that I have got the sense of what was journalism about, the positive and the negative of both, and to what extent it could be relevant, both from a theoretical, philosophical point of view and a practical, political point of view as well. I would tell you, frankly, those especially who are now pursuing a career in journalism or in academia of journalism or international politics, nothing could be exciting more than being a journalist, in my opinion. Of course, you must say politics as well. I would agree with that to an extent, that journalism most likely is guilt-free. Politics always has a little bit of guilt attached to it. In what sense? In politics, always you create some kind of mistakes most of the time, or you create some kind of crisis and you need to resolve it. In journalism, you always try to attach yourself with more ethical and more moral standard. So I view journalism as the idealist version of politics, you know, and that, in my opinion, in my life at least, I've noticed that when we classify ourselves as journalists, we need to have some kind of reference point. Beside the professional standards that we will learn always in universities, and mostly they are universal. Universal as far as the ethics are concerned and the code of conduct is concerned. And also, when it comes to the tools, which most of the time could be easily as well known or taught in schools and universities, the tools of journalism, also you can easily get to know them. But what is differentiating good journalists from those who are not as good is the software that a journalist has in his mind, which is a combination of wide knowledge of how things actually in public life, especially if you are a political journalist or someone who is concerned about public life, how does it operate? And this is not something that you can easily learn in a school. It is something that you need to pursue through your own studies, your own wide readings of history, of cultural norms, of even psychology of humans and societies, of societal norms and change that people go through. And I found sometimes even a little bit of philosophy is not bad. Why? It teaches you how to transcend an event into something a little bit above reality, to come up to a cognitive, to a mental imagination of that event, to see it within a wider perspective. So I would say, if you are a good journalist and a good political analyst, you need to take a distance. You need to take, as they say, a front seat in this beautiful theater in front of you. You watch, you place events in its context, and you enjoy the show. Never feel that you need to jump on the panel or jump on the platform and become an actor. You are an audience if you are a journalist. Of course, if you are a politician, jump. I mean, you can go and fight and whatever it is. If you are a journalist, don't fall under the temptation of being part of the story, because then you will lose the edge and you will become not, I don't say objective, because objectivity sometimes is really very complicated terminology, and I don't think that any human being per se could become objective. But you will lose balance, and you will become someone who is part of this game. In my understanding of how the Arab world has been operating, in 1996 there was nothing in the Arab world not controlled by the state. So the concept of journalism in any moment at that time means intelligence agencies forming TV stations, governments sponsoring radio stations, Ministry of Information launching a newspaper. So if you are a journalist, most likely you are not only paid by the state, but you are connected to the intelligence agency of the state as well. So you are just a tool of propaganda, and you are not respected by the society, because mainly everyone knows that you are telling the truth, that you are telling lies about the truth. Simple. So it was our challenge how to convince people that we are different. When we started reporting independently and telling stories that no one has heard before about the current reality and trying to project a proper image, people couldn't understand who we are. So every conspiracy theory in the universe was implemented upon us. We are a creation of the Mossad. The CIA established Al Jazeera to divide the Arab world. The Qataris wanted, every kind of imagination happened. People were not convinced that we are an independent network of journalists who would like to live up to a mission. That was not part of the interpretation. It took us 2-3 years to prove to the public that what we are doing, in fact, has nothing to do with a conspiracy. It is a norm that the world has discovered a long time ago, and we are very late on the scene. And please, you need to understand that, again, there is something called independent journalism. When that message became clear to the public, we were embraced, because as if people have been waiting for someone, and suddenly we have been loved. That kind of love of the public and the reputation that Al Jazeera acquired during the first few years was scary for governments. Then the battle started between us and governments. Every government in the Arab world wanted to suppress us and to put pressure on us and to close down our bureau and to put us in jail. Why? Because you are doing something and not under my control. And that was for them scary. So that oppression by governments led again to another round of love by the public, because they felt, okay, if everyone hates them, they mean they are not that bad, But also that came up with a challenge. We were put in a position, because of this kind of public, attraction or public love to us, that maybe we felt sometimes we have a mission beyond ordinary journalism. Because the Arab world is going through transformation, there is authoritarian regimes, there is a movement of reform that should start in the Arab world, there is a lot of corruption. So the temptation started, are we journalists or are we reformists? Do we have a mission or we only professionals? And that's not easy debate in the Arab world at that time. The result of this debate was the following, that I best reform our society, not by establishing a reform movement through screen, but through becoming a professional and balanced reporter. So the fact that I'm giving you accurate information and giving you proper contextualization of this information, I am helping you to reform yourself. I am not reforming you, but I'm giving you the medium to reform, giving you the environment to reform. And that was our mission since then. We refuse to be a reform or a political movement or a social movement. And sometimes it happens. You get emotional about events. But my role was as a director general to suppress this emotionality of myself and of my journalists. And just to share with you one story, the Arab Spring, for example, was the most amazing story that we covered, by far. We covered everything. I personally covered the transformation in South Africa, the Afghani war, the Iraqi war, the many elections across the world. But the most important thing that I personally feel proud of is the Arab Spring, because it's not only that something I would, classify as a normal coverage of an event. It was a moment, a historical moment of the Arabs realizing that they could do something different. I would say that night when Hosni Mubarak collapsed regime, the newsroom went in a form of massive celebration. You can't stop it. What can you do? I mean, people celebrate the fact that the guys of Tahrir Square won over. My role was to keep my head cool, to go to the newsroom, to take over the coverage while our producers are celebrating. Okay, I'm going to run the show and continue running the show in a cold way. I mean, nice, proper news coming out. Only when I left the newsroom at 12 o'clock at night, in my car back to my home, I was stopped, the car was stopped by demonstration on Doha beach, on the Corniche, and people knew me through the car, so one or two of them jumped inside the car, literally. They opened the door and they jumped to kiss me inside the door. That moment, I only collapsed in crying outside the newsroom. You can cry, you can weep, you can joyfully feel happy. But when you are in a newsroom, you feel you are inside the temple that has its own rituals. You need to maintain the tradition. And you need to convince everyone that he is responsible for what he is putting. In his private time, he can do whatever he wants to do. That separation between a private emotion and this professional emotion is not an easy thing to do. And in my opinion, it is a key for a success of any network or any journalist who would like to objectively, between two brackets, of course, qualified objectivity, understand reality. Because I found a lot of people, in the Arab world in particular, manipulate reality in order to suit its mindset. And that always leads to wrong decisions in politics and social life, everywhere in the world. So always you as a journalist is the custodian of the truth over the perceived truth. The perceived truth most likely is mixed with political maneuvering, mixed with emotional maneuvering, mixed with some kind of feeling. But the real truth is that you should become the reference of it. So when people listen to you as a journalist, they know you are telling the truth, regardless if this truth is popular or painful. But it is the truth. Build upon it. Don't utilize it in your own dogmatic way to suit your own purpose, because that is distortion of reality. So this is important for a journalist to do. The third one, never, ever feel tired of contextualizing. Never. Why? Information could be accurate, but there could be lies in a way. I can tell you figures about reality, but if I don't build these figures in context, they could mislead me or you to understand something that is not real. Contextualizing information and contextualizing news is important. We don't do much of contextualizing now. Journalism now is about rushing news to the screen or to the newspaper, especially in the age of immediacy, live reporting, all this kind of quick, fast takeaway news. People are just bombarded with thousands of news items every day. You can't build a map, a map of understanding reality. You as a journalist should draw that map. And then you fit the information in the map. So when there is an event, you read the event with a context of reality, which means historical explanation, which means some kind of background that put the news within the context, which means also a sense of meaning for the future, some kind of forecasting. To reach that level of a journalist who is not only narrating news but also giving knowledge, not in news but knowledge, you need to have good understanding of history. Really, I appreciate history very much. I don't know, is it me only? But I felt that journalism without history is just as if you are seeing, events disconnected. Life is continuous, and events do not happen just like that. Always they have something that has led to them to happen. And then also understand the trends of change. So you have in your mind that this event has happened, it has a history, but it will lead somewhere else as well. And then if you succeed in learning the trends of social change or political change and economic change, plus history, you will be a serious journalist that everyone will take you into consideration, including politicians, including thinkers, including researchers, everyone, because they know that you know what you are talking about. In one way, you are connected to the field and the information. In another way, you are connected to the cognitive map, why this event is important and where this event is likely to take us. So you engage in transforming information into knowledge, and that's a serious journalism. I feel now that is declining. Why? Because people don't want to spend a lot of time doing this thing. I want every day from you as a journalist 10 news items or 5 news items. I don't care about details. Make it in 30 seconds, in 1 minute, in 2 minutes, because I need to rush the news to the screen. We are sacrificing contextualization. And that is making poor audience, actually, because they can't understand what exactly this is happening. In the Arab world, that used to happen. This is why we dedicated 3 trends of journalism for contextualizing. The first one, we had a lot of documentaries produced by us. Documentaries that tackle placing information in a context, because in news sometimes they can't. But documentaries could, to a large extent, do much better than news. Second, investigative journalism. I can't but appreciate what Al Jazeera was doing in investigative journalism. We established a unit of investigative journalism. Until today is making headlines every time they publish something. Because investigative journalism, a team of people who are cool-minded, sitting down, researching a topic sometimes for months, but coming up with results of serious kind of knowledge that the people have never understood. And investigative journalism is important. It's expensive, definitely. A lot of TV stations don't want to see it because, wow, how much are we going to spend? I know, for example, when we used to make a quick program, which is 2 people talking to each other with the presenter, it costs you what? $2,000-3,000, nothing much, because you pay them a ticket and whatever, and they are talking. If you are making a documentary, normal documentary, it must cost up to 70 to 100,000. If you make investigative documentary, that takes you up to at least $1 million. And how many TV station is willing to sacrifice? So this is why I am approaching this matter from another dimension. I am calling for a new model of investigative journalism, which is not as expensive as the professional old school of thought, but something that could have crowdsourcing of information and use the networking that is happening in social media to provide us with a lot of service and a lot of material. And I think this model, slowly, if it is developed properly, we can also have this journalism of depth rather than the superficial reporting. The third one, which I cannot but always emphasize upon, field reporting. The field reporting is important. Why? If I'm sitting in a newsroom and I see an event happening in Syria or in Iraq, I can always, make from AFP or from Reuters or whatever it is a fantastic model and put it on the screen. But that will be like canned news, like something dead without soul. I think the spirit of news comes from field. When you are there in touch with actors, when you are in touch with people who are acting, who are really the people who are producing the news, you carry to the public through your screen or through your article not only factual presentation of reality, but also you are injecting the momentum, the spirit, and the soul that makes your report alive. It actually makes you alive as a human being. I mean, I tell you, as a reporter myself, there was nothing that I missed when I became a Director General like reporting. Reporting news was amazing for me. And always I wanted to just go to the field and report the news. Talk to the people, speak to them, understand the story, and report it also publicly. So these are three forms of journalism. I call them journalism of depth, are necessary, in my opinion, always to keep our profession above the current superficiality that is happening. There is a huge transformation in this profession. And this transformation is happening because of what? Because of social media, and because we could not yet find a model whereby we can get the best out of the two schools. Social media is providing us with democratically, democratization of the news, with much more accessibility to every corner of the world, but also the old school of journalism is providing us with much more, depth. So you need to combine both of them together, and this is the challenge for the future. And I see how much most of our organizations right now are suffering, because our old model was built on hierarchy, which has been almost demolished now through networking, flat networks, was built on expenses that cannot be afforded in the new age of lack of advertising and migration of advertising to social media. So there will be something new. I am right now owning the website of Al Jazeera, of Huffington Post Arabic, which is definitely completely different school, which is online only. It has never been a TV or a newspaper. And I see how the mechanism is different from the traditional school. And if I come back to Al Jazeera right now, I would have adjusted a lot of things to make this migration smooth from a traditional, expensive hierarchy into much more flat, easygoing, institution. And I think slowly for the next few years, this will be the dominant challenge that most of traditional media organizations going to face. In the Arab world, there is another element I think exists everywhere else, which is the concept of a nation that was searching for a future. I think in the 90s and beginning of 2000 of the new century, we did not have an imagination about the future. Most of us felt, trapped in the past. And the door has been closed of the future and thrown away, So we are trapped in the past. Okay, these are your kings, these are your presidents, this is your reality. You are different from the world. The world is something else. Forget about them. Don't listen to democracy, because democracy is a result of liberal West, which has been trying to destroy us. So democracy is a tool of destruction. Don't be listening to their news, because their news is biased and rubbish, and they have been always bad. Don't do this, don't do that. And they surrounded us by a mentality of fear and conspiracy. Al Jazeera shattered that by saying, listen, Al Jazeera English, for example, when we started, yes, it has a major reason of us projecting our narrative in the Middle East to the world, because we felt also undercovered, but also of connecting the world with us. Because I think the human shared values and the human shared morality and experiences are much more right now common than any moment since the human being discovered fire. And this is when now we hear to Mr. Trump and whoever speaking about globalization. I personally differentiate between two forms of globalization. There is the economic globalization, which is a result of the free trade and market and so on. You can always criticize it as part of the economic institution. But there is the internationalization of the human experience, which is right now not only happening, it is increasing. It's a trend that will continue. No one will be ever able to stop it. Our relationship with time and the space has changed. I might be a Palestinian, but that is not anymore relevant, for example, or as relevant to me as it used to be to my father or a grandfather or to me before the 90s, or to millions of people who are now connected to online, and they can have their own communities, their own experiences, their own relationships, and their own power communicating with the world. So our relationship with space has changed. Our relationship with our immediate circles, which is the hierarchies, has changed. The institution, I could be a member of a university staff, but at the same time I'm a member online with 10 other circles and networks that I'm exchanging thoughts and getting much more satisfaction in debating issues than my official post or my official job, and so on and so forth. So that is very important. The world has never been so much connected like now. And I don't see this sense of connection declining. It will increase. And with time, we are moving towards much more internationalized world. If you want to call it globalized, call it. But I don't want you to mix that with one economic model, which might be positive or negative. But that's important for us. This is why I'm saying, when you are a journalist, you need to understand the world outside your immediate local politics. The world is not as it used to be. It's not only about me living in Palestine or in Egypt or in Barcelona, wherever it is. It's much bigger than that. What's happening in Barcelona today, the mode of thinking about anything, will eventually be affected by the European Union. Will the European Union stay or not? Based on that, I'm going to define my even domestic intention regarding whether this future will be in this direction or another direction. The same in Palestine, the same in Syria, the same in Iraq. I can't now differentiate exactly where this domestic politics start and where the international or regional politics end. This kind of, integration between these schools or these circles of influence is extremely important for us as journalists to understand. Because in this case, I need to be empowered with international knowledge. And that international knowledge is diverse one. It means I don't want only to go to one think tank or one newspaper or one perspective of life and understand things from there. It is time that we realize, as people who are living in the West, for example, that there is a Western-centric narrative about the world. When you sit in any Western university or a newspaper or institution, you tend most likely to understand the world as everyone understood. Columbus went to America and he discovered the new land, and the world started in the 17th century, basically after Renaissance. The past was nice past, but who cares about it? And that continues. If you are living in Baghdad, your world started long time before that. It started when the Abbasids controlled the world and whatever it is, and so on and so forth. There was the Crusaders, and there is another narrative. If you are living in China, there's a 3,000 years of narrative to tell. If you are living in Africa, there is completely different narrative to tell. If you are a journalist, you have no narrative. You have no one single narrative to believe in. You can't afford the luxury of being a citizen of one narrative. You are a person who understands all these narratives, and when you are understanding events happening in Africa or Baghdad or Spain or wherever, you put it in their own narratives. And that's the power of explanatory paradigm. You can't explain events in Iraq and Syria through a Western-centric thinking. You can't. You will fail. Most likely, the data will come into your software. The output will be wrong. And that happened with the Americans all over the way. They occupied Iraq. They failed to interpret events, and they went into the dead end. They occupied Afghanistan. They failed. They went to a dead end. They are dealing with the Middle East, the Arab-Palestinian issue. They failed, dead end. Why? Because the software is rigid. They are implementing their own Western-centric or American-centric paradigm or reality which has nothing to do with the Western-centric paradigm. The same if I am living in Palestine, I want to analyze Europe based on my own perspective, I will fail. I need to understand the narrative of that region or that civilization or that culture. This is why I'm a great advocate of diversity. The world will never find an end, so there will be no flat world. Always we will have reference point. As I said, relatively, it is much more internationalized. But yet, again, I will have my own perception since I'm coming from a region. And that is not bad. It is actually legitimate because it is providing various readings of events from various dimensions and various opportunities. So we need to accept diversity and celebrate it actually, not only as a tool of interpretation, but as a reality in our life. It means the newsroom that we are going to develop tomorrow, if you are going to have a TV station or a newspaper or online, whatever, make sure that there is diversity in it. Make sure there's diverse cultures, diverse backgrounds, diverse, sexes, and so on and so forth. So you are introducing different angles to see one important event. And suddenly you have wealth of interpretation, wealth of knowledge. Al Jazeera had more than 65 nationalities. And we made a point of hiring as much as possible from various parts of the world. From Latin America to China, we have people sitting in Doha in the newsroom. So when you are stepping in the newsroom and I have something to discuss, I will find people giving me ideas I've never thought about it, because it is not part of my software. It is their software. So he will enrich me with a global vision that I have never had. And that's important. Respect diversity. It is pragmatically important to interpret events and to forecast the future. And ethically and morally, it is important because this world has never and will never be flat. It's always continue to have this kind of diversity. I would like to conclude by just saying one important issue related to mission. I don't think that the good journalist that I'm now trying to describe is the journalist who is acquiring this post for only a status of fame or money. It could sometimes, I don't know if money pays a lot now or not, but journalism in general has good status in a way. But also you have fame. You become famous, your name on the screen and everything else. What survives in the minds of people is not your image. It's not how handsome you are or how fantastic your presentation is, which unfortunately sometimes becomes overdone. It's acting more than anything else. What survives is how sincere are you in communicating to the public something that they could benefit from. How deep your knowledge is. How profound your character is. How satisfactory you are with the mission that you are in. So this is why I believe in the mission of journalism. A good journalist has mission. His mission, as I said, not to become an advocate of one political ideology or one reform style. No. His mission is to advocate truth as he believes in it and to explain the power of explanation to the public why he believes in it as it is. So you have an opinion, not a political one, not ideological, not racial, not religious. It is an opinion about reading the news and teaching the audience the real tools of how to interpret this news and convert it into knowledge. And therefore, you are a teacher as well. You are a teacher. And in this case, you have a mission. Sometimes this mission will lead you to troubles. If you are willing to take that, I think you will succeed. Amongst the early group of journalists that started Al Jazeera, I think each and every one of them went to jail, almost once, twice. Why? Because government didn't like their reporting. You go to your country back from Doha, they arrest you in the airport. Why did you say this? Okay, I'm part of an institution. So we have a division in Al Jazeera. We had a division just to follow up the cases of those who are arrested in Egypt, in Tunisia, wherever they are. And we had people killed in the war zones. And we have 2 offices bombed by the Americans. And the Americans were thinking of bombing the headquarters in Doha in a moment of time, which has more than 1,200 people working in it. And then also we had tens of bureaus closed down in government because of government policies in certain areas in the Arab world. But again, I think the kind of journalists that we are talking about, they decided that they really have a serious mission as journalists. And they would like to pursue this mission through some form of patience, but determination not to be, alienated against their core business, which is narrating the story as it is, putting it in context, and defending a proper understanding of it. So this is an exceptional mission. And I feel it why? Because with time, the best reward that you will get is not the finance. It might not be the fame, but the best reward is the love of the people. And I mean this. Wherever you go and people know that you are from Al Jazeera or whatever at that time and still until today, I meet people anywhere in the world. I mean, they know that I have been Al Jazeera. You feel that is the most satisfactory reward that you have. The love of the public and the feeling that you have been serving the people. Not centers of power, not governments, not corporations, not people who made money out of you. It is the public who felt that you are defending the right of knowledge. And you have been firm in that, and you have been really beneficial in doing that job. So if we have that mission in mind, I promise each one of you a successful job. And by the way, just to end by saying, politicians as well, they must have that kind of ethics. Unfortunately, now it does not exist a lot because, you know, in the age of Trump and the age of all these kind of things happening in the world, I don't think there is a great association between ethics and politics. But believe me, even in politics, a politician who is corrupt, no one is going to love him. And, you know, I mean, I've seen this. I've seen a lot of prime ministers, a lot of kings, and whatever it is. Once he is over from politics, he is ignored. Mostly they die out of depression or they have a psychological problem. But the issue is, will you end this life of yours loved as someone who's contributed to the public good, or you are going just to be an opportunist who is going to survive only because you have a little bit of money here and there, or fame, or communication with centers of authority? I personally believe that the first choice is the most rewarding and, pragmatically speaking, the most satisfying to yourself and to your family and to your, you know, group of people that you belong to. Thank you very much.